this is fascinating. Okay, so in a nutshell, and this is my specialty, this is where I spend most of my time, is in the world of genetics and biology, and demonstrating the validity of separate ancestry. Separate ancestry just says, Andy, that God created, as per the Bible, humans special and unique from any other form of life. Okay, and so on the screen here, these are Y chromosomes. Y chromosome is uniparentally inherited DNA. It's passed down on one side, the father's side. So I'd have my Y chromosome from my dad. My two sons have it from me. Women don't have a Y chromosome, right? Man is an XY, women are XX. I know some in the liberal evolutionary camp don't understand that.
Careful, Donny. I want to keep my channel, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So we won't get into that. And so human Y chromosomes here. This is a visual of the human Y and the great ape Y chromosomes. So you'll notice here, you got the human Y, and we're comparing it to, I'll put it bigger screen.
Remember, Donny, keep it layman terms, yeah? Because I'm the low IQ over here, yeah.
And feel free to ask any clarifying questions.
Because I know most people that are on my side watching this have no idea what you're talking about. They will understand X, Y, and that's where it pretty much ends.
And that's why I started off. So I think we're on the same page that Y chromosomes are specifically inherited on the male side. That's why it's called paternally versus maternally. So your mitochondrial DNA, that's a DNA compartment, that's a chromosome that's outside of the nucleus, and it's only inherited on the mother's side. So that's called maternally. Mm-hmm. But both of those DNA compartments are called uniparentally inherited DNA compartments. Uni rather than bi, because they're only passed out on one side. And so amazingly, I'll just throw this out there. I got a whole presentation on this on my channel, and I give the talk. Adam and Eve. We've literally discovered Adam and Eve in our genetics, because guess what? That mitochondrial DNA can be traced back to a single woman not too long ago. And Y chromosome variation, if you were to look at all male Y chromosomes on the planet, mine, yours, every other man, they're nearly identical. And you can trace back Y chromosomes, and I think you know where I'm going here, to a single man just 4,500 years ago based on known mutation rates. And that man would have been Noah, because he'd be our last Y chromosomal ancestor. Of course, he'd ultimately go back to Adam. His Y chromosome would probably only be slightly different from Adam's. And so we have Adam, Noah, and Eve's DNA. I mean, we've confirmed Adam and Eve. Now, here's the problem, though, for the evolutionists. They have no good answer for this, Andy. So on the screen, if we're on the same page, Y chromosome. This is what we're focusing on here, okay? Male inherited. Every single male Y chromosome, human-wise, nearly identical. Basically the same, which makes sense. We go back to one man, Adam, just 6,000 years ago. We wouldn't expect our Y chromosomes to be that different, because there's not a lot of time, like the evolutionists say there is, to build genetic diversity, okay? Now, notice this. The evolutionary community, who do they say is our closest relative, our closest cousin?
Chimpanzee.
The chimpanzee, right? So they'll say, okay, we and the chimpanzee go back to a common ancestor here, roughly 6 million years. That's these numbers here, 2 million, 6 million, 7 million, 13 million. And they believe that all these creatures here, they call humans human great apes, and they'll call the other great apes like chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, they'll call them non-human great apes. Okay. That's a false assumption. You know, we're not an ape. We're not an animal. And this here shows that we're unrelated to the great apes. So here's your human Y. Now compare it to our so-called closest cousin, Andy. This is the chimpanzee Y. I like the visual because anybody can look at it and you'll notice the chimpanzee Y is half the size, brother, of the human Y. This human Y is nothing like the chimpanzee Y. What in the world? I thought we're related to chimpanzees. I thought we go back to a common ancestor. This specific DNA material here, this is called heterochromatin. That is a fancy word, but all it means is This is a type of DNA. It's densely packed. It's important for the organism, and it comprises repetitive sequences called satellite DNA. Anyways, the important point here is you don't find it in the chimpanzee. Human-specific heterochromatin. Where is this in the chimpanzee? It's not there. Okay? So when you consider, Andy, overall gene content, size differences, and architecture, do you know how similar the human Y is to the chimpanzee Y? Brother, it is less than 30% the same. Less than 30. This right here is right from their own technical literature. Despite a recent divergence of these species, right, because they're assuming evolution, of course. They can't question the bigger picture, brother. In these technical papers, they got to assume evolution. Their Y chromosomes differ enormously. Just a little bit in size? No. Enormously in size and gene content. This is not a creationist saying this. This is right from their literature. I like debunking evolution right from their own technical work. Notice this. For example, the chimpanzee Y, again, this is from their own literature. The chimpanzee Y is only half the size of the human Y. So since the split, the hypothetical imaginary split, apparently the Y chromosome has changed so much that now it's only half the size. And the percentage of gene families shared by these two chromosomes that split, again, they're assuming that there was a split. But I would argue that this data suggests there wasn't a split, that humans are specially created, they're not related to chimpanzees. They say this is similar to that shared by human and chicken autosomes that split more than 310 million years ago. That's how surprised they were. As in, the differences were so massive and incredible. They're like, wow, this is what we would have expected between humans and chicken autosomes, not humans and chimpanzees, our closest cousin. And they even admit here, puzzlingly, this is a puzzle to them, brother. Is it a puzzle to us? No, they're not related. Chimpanzees and humans aren't related. This isn't a puzzle. We can explain this. Separate ancestry, special creation can explain this. The human Y, so you might have heard what's called a nested hierarchy. Oh, why do we have nested hierarchies in the primates? What that means basically is this. Humans share more. They're a lot more similar to a chimpanzee than they are to an orangutan or a dog or a fish. That's not evidence for evolution, okay? Look at modes of transportation. A sedan is a lot more similar to a hatchback than either are to a semi-tractor trailer or a plane or a boat. In design modes of transportation, you have a natural nested hierarchy. Pick any creature on the planet, it has to be more similar to something and less similar to something else. So it doesn't take much to look at a human, a chimpanzee, and let's say a dog. You know, what would you expect, Andy, without even knowing their genetic sequences? What do you believe is going to share more in terms of genes? Okay, a human and a chimp, or a human and a fish?
Human and a chimp.
Right, because they look more similar, right?
Sure.
Just take your kid to the zoo and say, okay, go look around the zoo, bring me back the creature that you think we look most similar to. They're probably going to come back with either a gorilla or a chimp or some kind of monkey, because we look nothing like a fish. Okay, so that's a natural nested hierarchy. Yeah, we do look a lot more similar to a chimp than we do to a dog or a fish or a bacteria. It's not evidence for evolution. These are hierarchies by design. Anyways, though, there are contradictions. There are inconsistencies to this so-called hierarchy. And they admit this right in this paper. Notice this. The human Y is more similar to the gorilla Y than to the chimpanzee Y, even though human and chimpanzees have a more recent common ancestor. Again, they're assuming evolution. This data would suggest there is no evolution. And so what that means in layman's terms is, hierarchy-wise, this human Y right here should be more similar to the chimp Y
than the gorilla
because we
Y.
share a more recent relationship, right? Does that make sense? Rather than the gorilla. See, we share a common ancestor with the gorilla longer ago, more distantly than the chimp.
We should be closer to the chimpanzee because we're not as far back.
You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in terms of Y chromosomes, now here's another important point too.
It's not a puzzle, man. It's just the theory ain't working for him. It's nothing to do with being a
Exactly.
puzzle, man.
Say that again. It's not a puzzle. It's that the theory ain't working for them. Can I steal that from you?
Of course you can, man.
I like that. It's not a puzzle. It's that the theory ain't working for. It's not even a good theory. The story ain't working for them. That's beautiful, brother. And so you're grasping this. And I would say this here is a piece of evidence that precludes, again, makes impossible common descent, human, because how are they going to account for these massive differences? When you account for overall size differences, gene content, and architecture, we're looking at Y chromosomes that are less than 30% the same. Y chromosomes lack what's called recombination for the most part. What recombination is it's just genetic scrambling. Every generation, your chromosomes line up. Okay, remember you get 50% from mom, 50% from dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those genetic variants recombine, they shuffle, and that's why your kids would look different. I mean, hypothetically, my wife and I, we could have 1 million kids if it were possible because of recombination, because of
they're not identical.
Right.
Yeah.
They would all look different.
Yeah.
Right. They would look closer. They'd have features similar to us.
Yeah.
But every single child would look different because there's genetic scrambling, allows for diversity. God loves diversity. Anyways, in your Y chromosomes, though, there's no chromosomal counterpart. Because what are we looking at? XY for a man, for a woman, XX. So there's not a counterpart. So it's not going to shuffle with anything. And so it's more stable. Does that make sense? It's not scrambling every generation. So it's less messy. It's more stable. Therefore, you'd actually expect, as compared to what's called autosomal DNA, that's the fancy word for basically saying that's the kind of DNA that's biparentally inherited, where we get a copy from mom, copy from dad, they shuffle, you get new combinations of chromosomes. You get variation. That's awesome. That's built in from God. But with the Y chromosome, it's largely passed on intact. And that's why we can trace them back right to a single man. So the Y chromosomes should actually be more stable. And yet, Andy, they're the most dissimilar. Is that not amazing? I'm not sure if you've seen this line of evidence, but this is right from the conventional literature.
Not in this detail, no. So the X chromosomes, though, compared to the humans and the chimpanzee, are obviously very similar.
Yes. Right here, you'll notice the X chromosomes. It's a good question. Your X chromosomes are all very similar between chimpanzees, bonobos, humans.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, you go. You got more important
things. I'm glad you brought that up. So there's what's called differentiating lines of evidence and agnostic lines of evidence, or non-discriminatory. I'll explain that for the audience, okay? So in the overall creation versus evolution debate, there is a lot of overlap. What I mean by that, Andy, is there's a lot of observations or pieces of evidence that both models can explain. So if I came to you, let's say hypothetically you're an evolutionist, right? Playing devil's advocate. And I were to say, Andy, creation's true because the sky is blue. Well, you'd say, Donny, you're crazy. Evolution can also account for why the sky is blue. If I were to say, well, creation's true because the earth is round. Okay, it's a sphere. You'd say, well,
the same lines of evidence.
Right. We can explain. There's overlap, okay? And so there's too much time wasted on pieces of evidence that's agnostic. Both sides can explain it. Whereas what you ever heard of homology? This is a big one, right? That these shared biological structures in the biological world, similar patterns in arms and legs,
the radius and the ulna and all that.
Yeah. Right, exactly. They'll line up humans with whales and bats and other mammals.
Yeah.
Okay, so they explain that as descent with modification. Homologous patterns due to shared ancestry. We've inherited these structures from past common ancestors. That's how they explain it. We as creationists, we'd say homologous patterns due to design. Human engineers take vehicles from North America, Asia, and Europe. Okay, so take a Honda Civic, a Chevy Cruze, and a Volkswagen Jetta. You're going to find many different similarities. They're going to have tires in common. The cars are going to be built a certain degree from the ground. They're going to have windshields. They might have backup cameras, right? Mirrors. They're going to have all types of things in common, homologous patterns. That doesn't prove that they inherited those from a common sedan ancestor in the Arctic. No, this is good design. This is common design. So both models can largely account for homology. Now, I would say that when you dig deep, homology is even a contradiction to evolution. Did you know that even in your similar sequences between humans and chimps, those similar sequences, there's differences? There's differences in how they're regulated. There are differences in how they're expressed, how they're turned on, how they're turned off. Like, for example, in the brain, and this should be an obvious one, similar sequences in the brain between humans and chimps, they're expressed totally different, right? And it doesn't take a genius to realize that humans are a lot more intelligent and sophisticated than chimpanzees. So anyways, that's all to say is there's a lot of pieces of evidence that we can both explain. And so this goes back to what you asked, which is a great question. Yes, there's a lot of similarity in the X chromosome. So we as creationists, we explain similarity due to common design. They'll explain similarity due to common descent. But wait a minute. I say, and tell me if this makes sense, it's the differences, Andy, that make all the difference. I'll say that again. It's the differences that make all the difference. We as creationists, we can explain all the similarities. But it's the dissimilarities, it's the massive differences that the evolutionists can't explain, but we can also explain because we don't believe all life, including whales and pine trees and human beings and strawberries, are related through common ancestry. We believe in separate ancestries. So what do we expect? We expect both similarities and differences, oftentimes incredible differences. Have a look at this. This is the latest research from basically 2023, 2024. If you were to take the human Y here and go compare it to the chimpanzee Y, this is how you do it. You got chimpanzee over here, brother, human over here. How you know you're doing this right? Take your human and compare it to the human. What does that say? 100%, right? Obviously, human to human, we're the same. Take your human to the chimp. What's that number there?
Sorry, I thought it was on mute. 26%. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no worries, brother. Not to put you on the spot. 26%.
No,
26%. Just sit there and think about that for a little bit. Human to human, 100%.
Mhm.
Chimp to chimp, 100%. We're supposedly related to the human. Let's compare human to chimp. Y chromosome. 26.2%. Okay, let's check the X chromosome. Human to chimp. 97.6 apparently. Okay, human to human, 100%. Sure, there's similarities there. But the similarities we can say are due to common design. They can say due to common descent, but it's the differences that make all the difference. Human to chimp Y chromosome, 26.2%. That right there is wild.